Okay, as we head into an election season, one that I personally think is extremely dangerous and critical, um, that old question rears its head. For someone who holds politics like mine, is it selling out to be involved in electoral politics at all? A lot of people who claim to be on the left, but not even as, quote, far left, and you know how I feel about that line metaphor, but even people who don't claim to be as, quote, far left as me say, oh, it's selling out to participate in electoral colleges, that we live in a two-party system, and that's true, unavoidably true. And the two parties are Tweedledum and Tweedledee. There's just not that much difference between them. And yet I say you need to be involved in electoral politics. Why and what do I mean when I say involved? I feel I need to explain that and why it's not selling out. To the contrary, I believe the reason people on the left despair of electoral politics is because they had an overly romantic view of what it could accomplish to start with. And they also had an overly optimistic understanding of our quote unquote democracy. I mean, we're not a democracy. The United States is not a democracy. If we got rid of the Electoral College, if we got rid of the Senate and its, well, first within the Senate, if we got rid of the filibuster, but beyond that, get rid of the Senate, because there's a ridiculous situation where the people of Alaska, and that's just, a handful of people, or a handful of people in Wyoming, get exactly as much power in the Senate as people of California or New York. So obviously it's not one man, one vote in at least one person, one vote representation. Excuse me for the sexist language. I'm an old man. I apologize. One person, one vote isn't anywhere close to true in the Senate. Even if there were no filibuster, it's still true that there are 50 Republican senators who represent tens of millions fewer people overall than the 50 Democratic senators. So you get rid of the Electoral College, you get rid of the Senate altogether. You still got gerrymandering. Get rid of gerrymandering altogether. You still got first past the post rather than proportional representation. So if you happen to be, if your point of view is widely held but also widely dispersed, to get zero representation, though maybe 40% of the people agree with you, you get rid of all that and you still got a system which fails to recognize that political power and economic power are a continuum, not two different species. And as long as there's massive economic power concentrated in the hands of the few, they've got massive political power. End of story. Even if we got rid of our representative system and went to direct democracy, we would still have the issue of economic power. So we're a million miles away from a democracy. We don't get involved in electoral politics because we believe we're in a democracy and we believe in democratic results, because we won't get them. What we're going to get is a choice between a conservative party and a fascist party. Why pick either one? Because fascism is worse. Because, and here's where I want to move on beyond to a metaphor of my own. I just recently did a talk about the danger of metaphors, but here's a metaphor that I think is apt because of the need for space and breathing room. If we get a Democratic Party control in our state, local, and federal governments, we will have more space for real change. They won't bring the real change. The Democrats are not going to change the world in a good way. They're only going to make minor adjustments. But they do provide more space for those of us who want to make real change. If there's a Republican government, there's no space at all. And we're in a dangerous time where we cannot afford to give up what little space we currently have to make a difference. You get involved in electoral politics, not because it's an end to itself, but it's a small step toward creating space. And then the big job is to use what space we have to do the real work. The real work isn't in the election, but the election helps us have the space to do the real work. Don't expect too much from the people you elect. Don't believe in leaders. Leaders don't exist. They are followers, and they follow the trend of the voters, who in turn are shaped by the conditions that educate them and the conditions of the world in which they find themselves, which people tend to believe is the way the world has to be. There's a lot of work to be done to change people's minds, to change the way things are structured. Very little of that can be done through the electoral system, but we need space to move, and that's why you should get involved. Not because it's the end in itself, but because it's a starting point to give you the space so that you can make something happen. Okay? Thanks.